All right, let's take it back to LA. We've got Yolanda T, Davis-Overstreet, and Lena
Hello
Williams.
there. Yeah, Lena. Let's thank you guys. It's been a minute
Yeah,
since
what's been happening?
I've seen you running for assembly.
yeah, it's a lot going on. Are you with us, Lena?
I am here.
Okay, awesome.
Welcome to the
Hello,
show.
hello.
Yeah, thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
thank you.
Thank you for having us. And a lot's been going on, and we're just going to dive into it. First, making the introduction. Once again, we've been behind the scenes doing a lot of work. We're moving into 2021. And we just thank you for, again, having us as far as We the People, Black Lives Rolling on bikes and walking, breathing, and really just, pushing forward. And I thought it would be a great addition to this conversation to have Lena join us as a co-host this month. She's doing some amazing work over at People for Mobility Justice, which she'll be talking on tonight. And that's, really our connection, even though we do know mutual folks as well that are not on the PMJ staff, but we all kind of come together at that intersection. So thank you, Lena, for just being willing to come on as a co-host this month.
We'll turn the show over to you guys and let you take it away.
You guys are family, so where you feel you have any questions as we're going through, just feel free to chime in, because tonight is really just a conversation. Well, not just the conversation with Lena and I, really just updating folks on what we've been doing as it relates to Black lives, mobility justice, and we'll probably throw some Black history on bikes in this conversation over the month, which is exciting. I was able to, this week's been kind of crazy, so I was able to put together a graphic today. And as you saw, just the graphic itself, the two historic images were the Buffalo Soldiers and also the 5 African-American women that bicycled from basically New York to Washington, D.C., which was really kind of a profound type of activity to take place in the early 1900s. And the graphic behind it, which is a map, you can't really see it in detail, but that actually is a map that in terms of the journey that the Buffalo Soldiers took. So we'll tap into that, as we're moving forward this month. Are you guys, I guess before we even start, I don't know if you were familiar, which I'm sure you were, the Buffalo Soldiers, but in terms of the women that bicycled from New York to Washington.
I have not heard this, so I want to hear this. Let's give us and the listeners a rundown of this. Tell us the story.
Definitely. Lena, are you familiar with that story? I'm sure you are.
Yes, I have some knowledge on the story. I know some folks who actually did a similar ride, a bunch of Black women also. But I would love to hear what you have to share.
Yeah, well, I've also been posting on Ride and Living Color every day. I'm posting a historic kind of snippet of activity and history of Black lives on bikes. And these women in particular, just pulling to their story right now because we have so many. Basically, and there are historians that are pretty much covering this story. And they bicycled from New York on a 250-mile bike ride to Washington, D.C. And actually what the connection was with these women in terms of kind of, I guess you can say, athletic background, or the YMCAs. And so one of them worked for the YMCA and had connections with YMCAs in Washington, D.C. So those were kind of the safe spaces that they were able to, to connect with on their journey. And this happened in 1928. And so, yeah, it's a very cool story. It was a 3-day ride. And they weren't necessarily on a particular group, at that time. But I guess if they were, it'd probably be something like a Black girls or Black women do bike, types of activities that we have today. And they really just did it for the love of bicycling and kind of that outdoor connection. And I think that's something that, we tend to miss sometimes because we are dealing with so much equity issues and mobility justice issues. We forget the fact that why we actually love bicycling is that we do love, for those of us that do it, we do love being outdoors, and we do love the concept of the great outdoors. And so even back in 1928, to see women that were stepping up and not letting fear, and really the racism that was existing in that time stop them. And so the name of these 5 women were, to call out their names, are Mary Lou Jackson, Velma Jackson, Ethel Miller, Leola Nelson, if I am pronouncing her name right, and then also Constance White. And so, and I think just some other little tidbits on their story are that the first day they biked 110 miles from New York to Philadelphia. And then they spent the night at the Philadelphia Young Women's Christian Association, which was the YWCA. I'm sorry, make a correction. It was the YWCA. And then the second day, they biked 40 miles to Wilmington, Delaware. And then the third day and final day of their bike ride, they biked more than 100 miles, arriving in Washington, D.C. around 9 p.m. And one of the spots that they went to that they had to see, so sightseeing, was the National Mall and Howard University. So that's a little story on the history of Black women, in this case in 1928, on bikes. And a lot of us, I mean, when I first started the efforts at Ride and Living Color, actually, I didn't know their story. That was around 2011, 2012, and I started doing a lot of the research. And their story had not come across, my platform yet. So it's years and years of continuing to see stories come in. The less narratives heard on Blacks on bikes, and our condition to bicycle were much different than obviously non-people of color and non-Black people. And I actually did a webinar with the Sylvie. I got to get Sylvie's last name right. I think it's Faltnick, but I'll pull it up. And out of San Diego and the San Diego Bike Coalition, and did a whole story, probably like about a 30-minute kind of presentation on African Americans on bikes. So it was really great.
It's kind of crazy that
question? Yeah.
Found out, or this story came to you in 2011, because I found out about the story of these women in 2012.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
With friends about cycling. Like, oh, did you hear about these bad, women back in the 1920s? I was like, wait, what? Like, no, like, what are you talking about? Like, put me on. So
exactly,
yeah, it's crazy.
We found out around the same time, and I think there was a lot of energy just in terms of really gathering the narratives of African Americans on bikes at that time. When I Googled, I Googled African Americans on bikes around 2011, 2012. Not a lot of information came up. So at that time, it did tell me that, this type of research is needed. And also that this was a time that more of our stories and untold stories should be told, because it's nowhere to be found. But if you Google today, you would find pages and pages of information, which really says something about bicycling as a whole, in terms of as an industry. But it also says that while we look into each one of those stories, we'll see kind of what that common thread is that deals with mobility justice issues or equity issues or infrastructure issues. And so, it's one conversation leads us to another conversation in terms of how we can improve upon our experience on bikes. And on that note, I think just kind of going into the conversation of mobility justice and why I brought Lena on as a co-host is that I actually think we complement each other in terms of what we'll be talking about tonight and throughout this month. Because while I started on a bike and riding years ago, even as a child, I find myself, dealing more in the areas of research, community organizing, community advocating, and behind the screen a little bit more than I really want to be. But also the fact that I think what pushes me is also my community is not set up to ride in the ways that you all have had conversations over the past hour. And so, but Lena, on the other hand, is out there riding. She's actually hands-on in terms of, while I'm doing advocacy work and connected to policy, connected to educating community members. Lena is doing the same thing, but she's doing it from the standpoint of, showing someone how to actually use a bike and the safety, all of the safety things that we need to look at when we actually, before we even get on a bike, and a lot of other things that she's doing. So that's what connected us with into People for Mobility Justice. I was an advocate that they asked me to be on the advisory board, and that was Adonia Lugo at the time, Dr. Adonia Lugo. And I said yes, and that was maybe about 4 years ago. And then over the past 4 months, actually, I've been acting as the interim chair and giving everyone else a break for a minute that have stood up and activated a lot of work as chair. So right now, I'm doing my part in trying to assist people for mobility justice in ways that I can. And Lena, on the other hand, I'm going to let her introduce herself and talk about what she's doing with mobility justice, people for mobility justice, and just as a bicyclist. So it's all yours, Melina.
Thank you, Yolanda. So I'm Lena Williams, and I am the bicycle education manager for People for Mobility Justice. So that means that I manage our program, but more specifically, we work with Metro to teach educational classes through their networks. And we also have a bike education program set up at PATH, which is People Assisting the Homeless, their campus in K-Town. We have an education program that we run there, along with a bike loaner system that we have in place at PATH for the residents to use. I am a avid bike commuter. It is something that I've decided is definitely beneficial to my mental health, not only my physical health, but my mental health. So for about 50 to 60% of the year, I do bike predominantly as my form of transportation. There are a couple months that things get a little hectic in my other job and in my other work, where I have to drive, and I typically really, really hate it. And when I get back to biking, it makes me feel, a lot better. So sharing that, experience with others is super, super important, particularly sharing that experience as a Black person moving through space in a very, very challenged, I think, climate is super, super important. Because we don't often see a lot of Black cyclists. We do see a lot of groups popping up now, which is really awesome, as Yolanda has mentioned. But typically, when you're looking for information about cyclists, the first people that come up, they're not generally pictures of, Black folks, unless you're thinking about like the big people like Major Taylor or someone like that. So, putting an everyday face, to the issue and to the work. Yeah. So through for mobility justice and the BEST program, right now we're teaching classes virtually. Everything is happening virtually, obviously, because of COVID and the numbers being as significant as they have been. So it has allowed us to engage in different ways. It has presented its own challenges, of course, but I think that it has also offered us some awesome opportunities that we were not necessarily afforded in the traditional setting of these classes. So traditionally, you would meet in person. There would be a limit to how many people would be in the class because, that's based on how many instructors would need to be there for on-hand, instruction. So typically they'd be limited to about, 25 people or so. In the virtual space, I've had more than 75 people in a class. I would never be able to do that,
Wow. Yeah.
in a, in person, sort of, scenario. I also had people visit my class. I did a class on group writing because it also allowed us opportunities to look at particular focuses of writing or types of writing to focus on and to sort of break down and provide, a little bit more instruction. So I did a group writing class and a night writing class. And I had people join from Spain and from France. And obviously that couldn't have happened, in the traditional setting without, significant planning, on their part.
Right.
So, being able to share this message, about bike safety and getting out, this crucial information, because as I heard earlier, one of the guests mentioned, there are a lot more people on bikes now, significantly more people on bikes for various reasons. I am a person who used to bike and use Metro for, some of my, longer rides. But since COVID has started, I have not been on a train or a bus. So wherever I'm biking home, I'm biking there. I don't get in the shared Ubers, anything where I have to share a ride with people is a little bit too much for me in terms of just my own, sort of comfort and safety. So biking has been the case is obviously for other people too, because it's the environment that we can control. So,
I have a question.
having the,
Actually, I have a question for you on that, Lena, just from a standpoint of the virtual biking, as well as what you're seeing, the increase of biking. And I know if I just hone in, for instance, on the community that I live in, West Adams, and in terms of educating, our community constituents on the purpose, of biking, on the benefits of biking, and how we are working, how our community is changing from a standpoint of infrastructure. There seems to be resistance to biking. So I'm wondering, who is this group that is increasing? How are they increasing on riding bikes, but yet we have many community constituents, and in particular in a community that is predominantly of color, that are not gravitating toward this conversation? How do you think we reach them, or what do you think is missing?
I think some of it in terms of the getting the message out there. I think sometimes when, depending on the message, the messenger is important. Some people only receive information from people that look like them, that they deem their peers, in some capacity. So, or, a religious figure, someone ahead of a, church or something like that. So having conversations with people that they might deem, respectable in some regard might be a benefit to getting, more people out and active in that way. I think that though.
I mean, just from a standpoint of having more effective ways of communicating with folks, for instance, and even sharing some of your virtual classes or safety classes. How is PMJ, what would you say PMJ is doing effectively to reach our communities of color?
So I think, we've built a really great network of, constituents. through the work that we've done in the communities already. And a lot of our work obviously is in predominantly Black and Brown communities. And we built, a trusting relationship with them. So I think, reaching out through social media, sending out emails. But I think that, obviously with the virtual piece of it, we are missing, and we have to recognize and point out the virtual divide, because there are going to be people who don't have access, to internet service, the capacity, to jump on these virtual things. So it is a point of conversation and something that we are looking to address in a more meaningful way.
Yeah, I hear you. And you have a virtual tour, I guess, program coming up. Can you talk to us about that?
Absolutely. But 1 second here. I see a hand raised. Is Nick, you have your hand up?
I just had a question about your classes. I was doing Metro Best for a while. And I think I might have been looking into teaching it because I'm an LCI.
Okay.
I mean, I haven't done anything with the certificate, but I was thinking about it, and I remember that if you had 7 people in a class, that triggered you had to have 2 instructors. Is there anything like that? I mean, you having 70 people in a class, I'm just wondering. I mean, was there any rule like that about the size of your classes before?
So there is a criteria for in-person classes that says if there are X amount of people, there have to be, so it's like a 2 instructor per like 12 or to 15 people, sort of ratio. For the virtual classes, you have to have about 25 people for 2 instructors. So for me, personally though, the class that I had that, really large attendance for, and why I say that, and I brought this up because a second instructor would have been necessary regardless, because it was a class that I was teaching on fixing a flat. And in terms of the navigation of that, and you're moving through all of these, very sort of like specific pieces that you're showing someone, it's harder to manage the class flow, the questions, identify those things as you are, focusing on this tire or this component that you're trying to share. So I think that, sometimes while there is a criteria that says this amount of people require or deem these amount of instructors, I think that some classes, depending on how technical they may be and hands-on they may be, they may just require 2 instructors just to make the experience of the user a lot more, friendly.
Okay, yeah. And do people ask questions, or I mean, that's a lot of people.
Tons of questions. We get tons of questions. People are wanting, and I mean, some of them are really, really great questions too, because I really appreciate the classes that become really conversational, where we are, just really having a conversation about our experiences on bike, and just sharing sort of stories through that. But yeah, we have, based on the topics, so the Fix a Flat class gets tons of questions because people want to know how to do that, and they want to be confident in doing that when they're out on the road, given that the bike shops are now, over capacity in terms of their ability to do sort of like quick repairs. Some of them, have been, super taxed because of COVID. And the number of people on bikes, people pulling out bikes from their garages and wherever, because they're also not available for sale right now in the way that they were. So people need those old bikes fixed because they want to get out and use them. So teaching people how to do some of the smaller mechanical things become really, really beneficial in times like this, because it keeps people moving, especially those of us who are using our bikes now instead of getting on the trains, instead of getting on the buses, because we feel like this is what's going to keep us the most safe.
Yeah, definitely. That kind of reminds me, because I know that that was the issue that Ade shared with us at Ride On Bike Shop in Lemert, that there was a backlog in terms of ordering bikes. And Did you say something? Did someone say something? Okay. And there are other bike, shops in the community. There's actually one that I've used maybe for the past 20 years. I've actually bought bikes from this other bike shop over in Culver City. I think it's World on Wheels or something of that sort, or Wheels on World, and I actually just went in there one day, not thinking I was it would even be able to get a bike because of the backlog. And I actually about 4 months ago, I guess it was 3 or 4 months ago, went in and bought a more of a hybrid, a giant bike. It's to do actually a little bit more city cruising, and the brand is Flourish. So it was a Live Flourish, or a bike made for women, and I've had a road bike for over 20 years. So I was so excited about getting this bike and kind of getting some of the accessories that you all were talking about earlier. Nick, I haven't done the grocery shopping part of it yet, but I'm looking forward to, because I have the saddles to be able to put some groceries in there. But I think also what stands out is when I ride in my community, for instance, along the Adams corridor, I was the only one riding during the weekend on my street. It's a lot of construction. I mean, on the corridor, it's a lot of construction going on, and it is a little unnerving to ride in spaces that are unpredictable in terms of the infrastructure. So I guess, is that something that you really kind of tap into, and talk to community, about that, and how those that actually don't even ride that much, but again, we need to get more Black folks and brown folks out on bikes, but our communities are so ill-equipped. How do you tell women or families with their children, to get out and roll and to be confident in doing it?
For sure. You know, I was going to mention before that, some of the people may not be getting out on bikes because of safety concerns,
Mm-hmm.
or because of, poor infrastructure.
How do you?
Definitely. But I think that for me, in my classes, I do address, the situations and the conditions here in Los Angeles,
Right.
because I am experiencing them. And as a female presenting person, I am somewhat petite. So
Mhm.
people think that, that means a lot of things, about me. So I often tell, women, female bodied people, that you should definitely, if you're riding at night, riding during the day, it's LA. Like, you should always have something that you could use as a weapon, something that you can
Mhm.
protect yourself. Bike locks are really, really great for that. Like, they are
Mhm.
multiple use in that way. But like, not saying that you're going to have to, get to that point. But I was riding in DC one night, when I
Mhm.
started bike commuting in DC, and this man tried to grab me off of my bike.
Oh my
So
God,
I've had,
that's
very,
terrible.
very scary, exactly, very scary, sort of situation. So because I've experienced it, I tell
Mhm.
people generally trust your gut, know as much as you can about, the communities that you are riding in. It's important to ride them during the day and night so that
Right.
get a feel for, what it's like. But also, like, I tell people in terms of the comfort of it,
Mhm.
riding in a group is the way to get most comfortable on the
Okay.
road, I think, because it provides a lot of safety for you and buffers.
Yes.
Also, you have to be out there. Like, when people ask about, like, how do you get comfortable on a bike, it's like having your butt on the saddle. Like, you
Yeah.
have to be, out there
Practice.
experiencing it.
Practice.
Indeed, practice
Mhm.
makes perfect. And I
Mhm.
know that, many of the streets, especially here in, South LA, over West Adams area, going through Mid City,
Right.
definitely over here in Lamert, as well. Like, very, very poor, traffic conditions, a lot of traffic, people are speeding. So it does not promote a lot of confidence in terms of,
You're right. You're
being out
right.
there safely. But I think that confidence is something that comes, to you through doing things repetitively, because you build
Yes.
up your skill, you build up your, you muster up this bravery, after you continuously do it. So
For
usually
sure.
after any traumatic experience that I've had on bike, I get right back on the bike. The very next day, as soon as I can, I try to get back on the bike so that I keep that, sort of energy, and I don't allow that fear to settle in me.
You know,
I'm sorry, Nick, you have a question?
From back before, I had a question about People for Mobility Justice's mission, and also when you spoke about the image of cyclists, is that accurate, who bikes?
So me personally, I've done a lot of research around cyclists and Black people on bikes. I've done a lot of presentations for people and had to look up photos and do research. And most of the times when I do these Google searches, they're not Black people that immediately come up.
mhm. Yeah, that's
So,
marketing and advertising. Yeah,
right, I was going to say, so
yeah.
traditionally, it's how it's been in terms of the cycling culture until, very recently, the last couple years, it was, really white. We only have Aisha McGowan as the,
Mhm.
Black professional, cyclist, woman cyclist. So yes,
Right.
the
Actually,
culture of it
for
is,
Liv. Yeah,
right,
yeah.
is
Mhm.
very, very white.
So
So what
we
was your
often hear
question?
that like the people who actually bike, on the streets and commuting and going to work, they're not the same demographic of like the bike sport.
Mhm.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we have it. We have bike cycling groups, road bike, groups, or like Black Kids Do Bike, which is a combination. You've had Jeremy Swift on your show, where they do it more for recreation and social camaraderie. But I think what we're also talking about are that our realities are different. In terms of when we get on a bike, it's not just uh it's more than just getting on a bike and riding for leisure or to go grocery shopping. We have barriers that we have to interact with, and what Lena's saying is even overcome in terms of fear or danger that Black cyclists or Black people in general have to encounter outdoors, in the great outdoors, that we too want to be able to enjoy and be healthy and lose weight, along with movement in terms of going to our jobs or our friend's house on a bike. But we have to second, I think those of us that are not riding in that capacity, those fears exist, those traumas exist, as well as the barriers in our community exist. And so I think that's one of the things why I find myself behind the screen or on the phone or advocating, is because I'm trying to get more lights on our street. I'm trying to educate community members on the value of cycling. However, it's going to take them to come on board with us to create environments where we can ride in leisure. Where my kids didn't grow up the way I grew up. Growing up in the 60s, I think the advantage we had in LA and in this community where we didn't have as many cars. So while we did ride on the sidewalk, every time we crossed the street, we didn't have to look out for speeding cars or traffic that was getting off of the main corridors and going down residential streets speedy. And so I was on a bike growing up, throughout this community. But unfortunately, my kids, um, being born in 19, my son is 23, my daughter's 18. So I had that fear that I didn't want them to get hit. So that really kind of put a block and a barrier for them to get out there and ride the way that I did. And so I think that's what the awesome thing about what PMJ is doing and what Lena's doing and other organizations like this is that we have to teach our kids how to watch for all these barriers that exist now, in particular, traffic and bad, disenfranchised infrastructure. We don't have enough cross traffic lights, crosswalks, or lighting in our communities in order for our children to be able to say, hey, I'm leaving, I'm going to go ride in the community, without a parent most of the time saying, no, let's put your bikes in the car and let me take you to the beach and you ride on the beach path or a bike trail versus riding in your community. What do you have to say about that, Lena?
So I wanted to also get to the point that Nick was making in terms of the class issue, in terms of addressing who's on bikes right now. So obviously, the people who are most marginalized have to use bikes as a way of transportation and not necessarily just by choice. There's some of us that get to choose that we want to bike daily, and there's some of us who have to because we don't have access to cars. We may not have access to the proper documentation to get cars, whatever the reason. So those people may be more Black and brown, obviously, that you see on the streets who are using bikes as a way of commuting to work and school, as a way of survival, and as a way of life. So yes, but it does not mean that the conditions that we face are not more challenged, because this industry in this world, in terms of the system, was never set up for us to really exist in the ways that we are. So those are, the challenges that we have. Speaking of thinking about the safety of it, just the infrastructure and dealing with the system. Today is Dijon Kizzy's 30th birthday, his first birthday after being killed by the state. So he was a Black man biking, through his community. So we have to question whether it is safe for us. Some of us, say, there are many other things that are unsafe as well. If I'm gonna get on the train, something could happen, because as we know, as Black and brown people, nothing guarantees us safety. Not even staying in our homes, because Breonna Taylor was in her house, right? So if we have no guaranteed safety around that, I guess I'm going to have to force myself out into this, into this world and deal with it, and, sort of take up this free space, in the ways that I can, and be rebellious in that way, because, there's joy in that,
Right.
So I think that there are a lot of people who shelter their children, and want, for them not to be out on bike. And I think that as a child, my mom's fears, stopped me from doing a lot of things, until I had to sit with myself and say, am I afraid because somebody else told me, that these things could happen? Or am I afraid because of something I really like, something that happened to me? So it becomes a sort of a battle, that you have to, sort of address, because again, if nothing guarantees me safety, I might as well, get out and do the thing that I really enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, that's really deep. I think that was, it's a profound way that we have to recognize how you had to think, and how you had to make the decision to do the things you have in terms of moving around in space, all the way down to, bicycling, and kind of actually not being secured, within this metal box, so to speak, that moves around in our cities, where there's still so much racism and discrimination. And it's, we don't realize, I think, how much we are holding, within our whole psyche, when we move around in space. And it is just a wonder that we do it, that we manage to still every day do it. And knowing kind of, that placement or of where that fear exists, where that trauma, or in your case and many others cases, the trauma of being attacked, or some folks actually have got hit, by traffic, or they've been pulled over. Like Ade told the story on one of our Bike Talk conversations, of being pulled over while biking Black. He had not done any, created any particular crime, other than the police at that time saw him and called him suspicious. And like you said, just from a standpoint of Dijon Kinsey, where we actually did the memorial ride, was that toward the beginning of the summer that we did that, or midsummer?
It was midsummer.
Midsummer. It's just, it is amazing that we get up every day and continue to advocate in so many different areas.
Yeah, I got pulled over by police on my bike here in LA. I was
Mm-hmm.
on my way to a doctor's appointment, and I
Hmm.
actually was quoted in the LA Times on an article about that mentioned
Oh
DeJohnson
yeah,
doing
yeah,
all
I
of
remember that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
the traffic injustices. But yeah, I was riding to my doctor's office, and the police officer uh, like
Where was this,
let
Lena?
a
Where was
siren
it
go.
exactly?
It was MLK and Degnan.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Right in
Yeah,
the
I was
merge.
riding
Yeah.
up MLK. Yeah, I was going MLK towards the Crenshaw Mall area
Okay.
because I was trying
Mm-hmm.
to go past the mall to get up into the Dons to drop that down over. So I was trying to avoid a little bit of the traffic, but I was just riding MLK because it was a morning after COVID had already started. So I was like, there are not
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people out. So, this will be fine.
Yes.
And they threw the sirens on,
Mm.
and I'm like riding, and I'm like, that can't be for me. Like,
Right, right.
and then he hits me on the loudspeaker, like, you better pull over. And I'm like, what?
What?
Like, what is happening
Oh
right
my
now?
God. Yes.
I was like, this is crazy. So he comes over to me, doesn't have on a mask, and I was like, officer, you don't even have like a mask on, and like, this is COVID. Like,
Right.
he was like, he's like, are you gonna shut up, or do I have to give you a ticket? And I was like, wait,
Are you
what?
serious?
I was like,
Uh,
I'm trying to go to my doctor's office, sir. Like, what's the problem? He's like, you didn't stop when I told you to stop. And I was like, I didn't recognize that I was just supposed to stop randomly. Like, what
like
am
I
I
didn't
being
know you
stopped
were pulling
for?
me over.
Exactly. I was
Period.
like, how am I supposed to know that these flashing lights are for somebody on a bike? Like,
Correct.
I'm
Correct.
like, I'm like, what have I done? I was like, I obviously thought you were trying to stop a car. Like,
Exactly.
what's up? Like, it was just the craziest, most bizarre,
And what
experience.
was his reasoning? Was it his reasoning to pull you over that he obviously just made up on the spot because you didn't pull over on a bike?
Yes, he said, because I did not stop.
But
And
what
I
was it
said,
before you didn't stop?
right, that I was, I said, sir, I said, so I get that you're saying that I did not stop when you told me to. However, I am not clear about what the initial cause was for you to stop me.
In the first
He
place?
told me that I had no right to ask these questions,
Hmm.
that he was going to write me a ticket if I continued to ask questions. I
There
was
you
like,
go.
okay, sir.
Yeah.
Like,
Whatever
this makes
happened?
no sense to
How
me.
was the follow up on that, Lena? Did you get his name and number and all of
I
that?
got
His
his,
badge?
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I got his name and badge number, and I contacted the chief and that I've seen out in Lamert, and I haven't really, heard anything back. Like, I don't think that civilian complaints are high on their list
Hmm.
of like addressing. Um, like, I also feel like, we're talking about LAPD, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
they get to kind of run the way that they want to run, here. So some of us just, have to be harassed in the process, unfortunately.
So he gave you a
Um,
ticket?
no,
He
I
didn't.
just, when he said the last time he was going to give me a ticket if I didn't stop asking questions, I just said, okay, sir. I said nothing else, and I just
Mm-hmm.
turned to face the direction of the traffic that I was trying to get into.
Mm-hmm.
I stood there for another maybe 10 seconds,
Mm-hmm.
and then I rode off.
Mm. Then he said nothing else. He got back in his
No,
car or
he said nothing. He said I think he said something like, next time you need to stop, or something like that.
mm-hmm.
But I didn't speak a word. I didn't say anything
Yes.
else. I just kept my face turned in that direction. After he said that he turned to walk away, I just rode off.
Mm. So this is exactly, what we talk about, Nick and Don, when we talk about mobility justice. This is a prime example of, how do we move forward, both addressing the injustices, which a lot of us are spending time, looking into that, along with how do we get Black lives out on bikes, and basically to know what their rights are and to ride safely, and to keep themselves safe, because there's at the intersection of bicycling, We are also looking at the climate crisis issues that exist in Los Angeles, that exist in the world for that matter. And we have to play a part. Black lives have to be on board with the lifestyle changes that we can make in contributing to help heal our planet. But we're not going to be able to play an effective role and play a part, nor are we going to take it serious. And actually, nor will we have time to really focus on climate change when our very lives. A climate crisis when we are focusing on Black lives crisis, and that's where it becomes so complicated. And that's why we have to continue to have these conversations, both to educate each other and to get down to and really defund the police, and not all police, but defund and fire, get rid of the police that are misusing and really are not a representation of safety for everyone. We need police, or the police that we do have, that value all lives and Black lives in particular, in terms of what Lena has explained to us. So it's really that. I mean, that's what keeps me up at night. Actually, that's what kind of keeps me off the bike even sometimes, because I'm so busy researching or trying to figure out what conversation or what event or that I need to be in next to have these conversations. I think that's what actually made me go back to graduate school in the later part of my life, and have more awakenings in terms of the crisis that exists around us. And also not that, but that each of us and whoever's listening, that each of us has to really kind of get on board and play a role. We can't just sit back and listen to conversations. We can't just share our opinions and not actually also be doing something. So I think that's the other thing, is we have a lot of people that are just sitting back and listening, but they're not involved in some form or fashion to change those injustices, so that more of us can get on bikes. The bottom line. Lena, on the, I guess, exciting and kind of adventurous note, with your virtual tours that hopefully one day soon can turn into real, biking activities, are you looking at historic Black locations in Los Angeles to kind of put on the map?
Definitely. I mean, I will be honest though and say that I am a bit hesitant to share certain spaces with the general public.
That's true.
Because I don't want our culture to be viewed purely as tourism. And for gentrifiers to come and say, hey, I want to now, invest in this community. I don't want to give any fuel to the fire. Right. But I definitely want to highlight places, some historic places that people may or may not have, sort of checked out. Usually when I'm doing tours around Black LA or Black history in LA, I definitely like to include the Biddy Mason Memorial over in downtown LA.
Yes.
Biddy Mason, I like to refer to, I don't know if we can use the AAS word on the podcast, but I like to refer to her as a very bad Mama Jamma. Yes. Who provided, lots of inspiration for folks, being, someone who purchased, her freedom from her, from her owner. She purchased land and all things. Oh, awesome. We can use all words. Okay, so Biddy Mason is badass. I do want to say that.
Right.
I like to
so you get beeped out.
Emphasize that when I am doing those tours. I also like to hit up some spots on Central Avenue. There's the African American Firehouse on Central Avenue. There's several jazz spots, places that jazz spots used to be
Yeah.
because they're no longer in existence or standing.
Oh,
And the Dunbar, obviously, so
yeah,
having
yeah.
folks, hit up those spots. But for the self-guided tours that I'm trying to curate right now, we're focusing a little bit more on art and street art, and some of the beautiful, sort of pieces that tell really intricate stories about, history and culture here in LA. So we have one that we're doing, an East LA mural ride.
Okay.
And we're also working on a South LA mural ride that will include some really beautiful pieces. One that we visited when we did the Dijon Kizzy's ride for his memorial, one of the meetup spots outside of Good Fred's, is a really beautiful mural. And it has a lot of really beautiful quotes on it. But the piece that means or resonated most with me, it says, "Freedom won't wait." And it's a quote that, always, sort of is in the back of my mind when fear, comes up. Freedom won't wait. And everything we desire is on the other side of that fear. So, and that's my freedom. So, that
Wow.
quote means,
Wow.
it means a lot to me. So I'd like to, really incorporate that piece for folks.
Yeah, that sounds really, I can't wait to see what you guys create. I know you're going to be going out and kind of doing scouting this weekend, right? Was that this
Definitely.
weekend that you're gonna, yeah,
Yep. On Sunday, we're going to be doing that.
yeah. And I would say, what's so interesting about us having this conversation and the fact that, we are connected with the various, I guess, activities and community-based organizations throughout the city is how our conversation intersects, because I visualize as you're talking about, you know, those that have to bike and have no choice, and from a standpoint of a bike is their form of transportation versus those that have a choice. And so our perspective is different when we are on a bike or walking as it is when we are driving. And we come closer to our land and our community when we move around in space, just as a human body, and our human experience is different. And so I think that also is why the work that I do at the neighborhood council, I see the trash on our street that could be a bike lane, or the tore up pavement and curbs and cement, and on certain streets throughout my community, which I know we have many communities like this. And these communities, it's not a coincidence that these communities are falling apart. It's been years of decay where there is no investment in those communities. And that's when they turn into disenfranchised communities. And if we look at it, when I was younger, I was like, man, I have to go to another community and hang out because I really don't like the feel of this community. But at that time, I didn't connect it to the history of why this misused space, like a stepchild, is the way that it is. And so, I know we've had these conversations in People for Mobility Justice, along with other advocacy work. But many of these communities have been the result of why we are the way we are today is redlining. And so I know we've tapped into that. It's not a coincidence. It is not a non-intentional consequence. It is a strategy. It was a strategy that began back in the 1930s and 1920s, and basically but came to life in the 1930s, that these red line communities where the discrimination and racism that existed pushed Black people in to live in these communities along with other people of color. And also that no money would be put into these communities. And so when
That's the major piece.
so why,
The
how can we
money.
ride a bike? So I guess, how can we ride a bike? How can we be outdoor athletic people from that perspective when our environments have created barriers for us to do that? So I just wanted to note that through the neighborhood council, the work that I am doing, is to also be able to connect to the resources that are out there for everyone, for all neighbors in neighborhoods, to contact 311, take pictures. You don't have to be a Black person to take pictures. You can be, a baby, 5-year-old that knows how to operate a cell phone can take pictures of community disenfranchisement, trash, things that are not healthy, and send it to 311 and have them come out and begin the process of advocating and cleaning your neighborhood. So this is just kind of that call I want to put out for our community at large. Everyone in Los Angeles County has access to 311. This is how you can start helping us when in our communities. If you want to play a role as an advocate when you're rolling through our community, when you live in our community, that you actually too, anyone can report where you see injustice, where you see mobility injustice. That would be 911 for any type of mobility injustice that you see. It is something that we have to do together. And for those that truly understand that and believe that. And so I think just to kind of piggyback on what you're saying, Lena, with your virtual tours and your riding, the spaces need to be improved so that you can ride more, so that we can ride more. And I know that we are down to the last minute, and this has been a great conversation. It's not the end. We're going to be here every Friday. We're going to invite some guests to come on and join us in our conversations moving into 2021, which, we're looking at it as a time of transition and a time of the word I use is regenerative, which means that we're working with each other, we're helping each other, and so much healing is needed. I think that was what, Lena, you and I and Pauletta and Michaela talked about, in our first session, because you guys were my first guests, in terms of all those healing components of it. So if you want to share just the contact information for PMJ or anything else that you think folks should know before we wrap up this evening.
Yes, and I'd like to quickly tell you, PMJ is a Black, Indigenous, people of color organization that sees critical consciousness about mobility justice across all communities. We envision a world where people have the freedom and resources to move in public spaces with love and dignity. I can be reached at lena@mobilityjustice.org. We are on the socials on Instagram and Facebook at People for Mobility Justice. You can find us on our website, peopleformobilityjustice.org. Definitely check us out. Check out, the classes that we have coming up. Definitely. Sign up for emails. And thank you.
Awesome. This has been great. I would just like to share the information on me. Most folks know I'm Yolanda Davis-Overstreet. Actually, for those of you that would just like to talk to me directly about the work that I'm doing, you can actually find me on LinkedIn. Also, my email is ydavisoverstreet@gmail.com. You can find a lot of the advocacy work that I'm doing at Ride and Living Color on Facebook and also on Instagram. And we have some great some more surprises coming up in the coming weeks. And we just thank Nick and Don. Once again, it's just so good to be back and be on your platform, Bike Talk platform. And we look forward to the coming weeks.
Awesome. It's great to have you back, Yolanda. Great conversation.
Good seeing you.
Yeah.
And thanks to you and Lena and you guys, we'll see you next week. I don't know about, hopefully We'll see both of you guys next week.
Yeah,
or
it's both
just
of us.
you or okay,
no,
great.
It's both of us. I've pulled her on. Yeah, she's with me this month. Thank you, Lena.
Yeah, thank you. I look forward to seeing you all next week.
Okay, thank you guys. Bye-bye.
Right. Take care. All right, that was Lena and Yolanda, and we're going to see them next week, and we're stoked to see Yolanda back. So this is good. Things are looking up. Nick, why don't we take it out? Bike Talk KPFK live stream. We'll see y'all next week.
I rise in the morning and greet the day. Pull out the bike and I'm on my way. The transport
And George.
Fred.
They forgot George.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Bike Talk. If you want to hear more, go to kpfk.org, navigate to programs, and choose Bike Talk. On the Bike Talk page, click on the archives link to play or download shows posted in the last 4 months. Go to biketalk.com and copy or click on the RSS link to subscribe. Our Twitter handle is BikeTalkPFK. On Facebook, we are Bike Talk. You can become friends and join our group.
That reminds me, I got to join Bike Commuter.